Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Welcome to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. Super excited to have everyone here. Two returning guests. Doug, let's kick off with you. Short intro.
Sure, Doug Thompson. I'm the Chief Education Architect at Tanium. Been there about 5 years, and I'm just this nerd, sales nerd, geek, AI. I'm waiting to hear what these guys have to say about AI.
I thought you were like a Chief Education Architect.
Well, I thought I said that, but yeah, that's who I am. But it's simply I know more about education at Tanium than everybody else.
So you're a good person to know.
Good person to know, yeah. Been in the higher ed business for now like 15, 16 years from both companies I worked at, and I just love it.
Kyle?
Excited to be here at EDUCAUSE. Kyle Bowen, Deputy Chief Information Officer at State University. It's an exciting opportunity to kind of focus in on all the things happening around AI, learning, and health, and how those things come together.
Yeah, I love it. We're going to unpack the big enterprise of ASU. Also linking back to last year's episode. We'll have that in the show notes too. Joe,
good afternoon. First time, I'm one of the first timer here. So I'm Joe Sabato, I'm Deputy CIO at UC Santa Barbara. So I oversee a team of 65 amazing individuals. Student information systems, financial information systems, data governance, I'm leading that effort as well. Also leading the AI community of practice. On my side gig, with my interest, I also have a website called Campus AI Exchange, and that is where I think we connected about the framework on how to do responsible AI adoption in higher education, which I think we'll talk about today.
Yeah, we'll talk about that today. And for the cool kids, I know he said UT Santa Barbara. I will probably refer to it as UCSB for the rest, living in Santa Barbara. Joe, we'll kick off with you. So you spent 30 years at UCSB. I'm not even 30, no, I'm totally kidding. But that's a great amount of time. So you've become a thought leader, questioning the AI hype. We had a couple of those people on the podcast today talking about the AI hype cycle. And you put out a lot of content on LinkedIn, which I think is actually really great. One of the most common things we're talking about right now is a lot of people are getting excited about AI, but they're not focusing on, hey, what's that business problem we're trying to solve? Which I think there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about this, I want to say it was Walmart. I might have got it wrong, but it was either Walmart or another company where they had done so many POCs and they actually figured out, we don't even know what we're doing, so we're going to shut down a bunch of those. So, but I like that you're questioning, right? I mean, this is kind of the academic piece. We want to be critical thinkers. And so in quotes you had is, show me the evidence, right? I love that. So I'm just going to walk through real quick, how are you thinking about the current cycle that we're in? How are you thinking about AI and how that applies to real use cases at UCSB?
So, and I'll talk about UCSB, of course, and then also what I'm seeing in higher education. Oftentimes what I've seen is, I've been in higher education for the last 30 years, and there's always, mobile first, cloud first, the technology first, and I always have to say, at the end of the day, what is the outcome we're looking for? Right, and of course, for me, being a first generation, immigrant, I always look at it from like an equity lens, a student success lens. So that's one of the ways I try to look at adoption AI, right? It's like, at the end of the day, why are we doing this in the first place? And Kyle didn't ask me to say this, but I am really impressed of what ASU is doing in terms of the outcomes, outcome driven, right? And to me, it's evidence-based. So, oftentimes I say, well, we're adopting this agent, this and that, and I have to say, well, how does that tie to your mission? And I was privileged enough to be able to present the last weeks, Agentic AI and student experience. And the things they're doing there with AI, it really is consistent with what the president's saying, which is like, we're not measured by the number of students that we exclude, it's the number of students that we extend. And so the things that they're doing there, there's evidence that that's happening. And to me, at the end of the day, you just ask students. I had a student attend one of my sessions, and just the passion that they have about AI and the experience that they have, to me, it goes down to that, right? Personal experience. Again, he didn't tell me to say this, but I'm very impressed.
I appreciate the vote of confidence there.
I love that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that conference in a second, but I do want to talk about, you mentioned this briefly, the Campus AI framework.
Sure.
And focusing on technology and the whole person.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit more. You actually share my, we talked for what, 75 minutes?
That's right.
Yeah, we went for 75 minutes. You're sharing your screen and showing me. Walk us through the Campus AI framework and everything that you shared.
Sure, this is more of a product of my curiosity. So, I'm a curious person. So I want to understand how higher education in general is approaching AI. And without a framework, it can be overwhelming, right? There's a policy, there's risk assessments, there's community practice, like change management, all the way to implementation. So I came up with this framework, primarily for me initially, to understand how to approach the different topics, 8 pillars, all the way from the mission of the university, all the way down to how do you implement it, and change management and community practice being in the middle of that. So that's how I got it started. But that's the way I look at, especially even this vendors systems here. How are they approaching adoption, responsible adoption, using those different lenses?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Is there from that framework, was there 1 or 2 things that you would love to share for the community out here? I'll link to it in the show notes, but that you would really want them to take away.
Sure, I think it is the adoption of AI. I think it's a leadership imperative. At the end of the day, it's about people. So you start with people, you end with people. And so as leaders, we have to make sure that stakeholders are represented. And I followed this theory from Pless and Mack called the responsible leadership theory. What it says is you're not just dealing with followers, you're dealing with different stakeholders with different values. And you see that often in higher education where you have faculty, you have staff, you have students, you have administrators, you have the community. So you have to account for their value systems, and then also are they represented in the process? And as a leader, how do you then kind of look at all those different values and come up with a solution? Not necessarily consensus, you're never going to get consensus, but really kind of, again, just go through that process of being them represented.
Yeah, no, I really like that. So Kyle, in episode 200 with, I didn't originally plan it this way, but on episode 200, Josh Bright came on. Did you say hi to him? Did you see him? He was right here.
I missed him.
Oh no! Oh, hopefully he comes back.
I thought he was going to sit down here with us for this session.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I thought
Deja vu.
Yeah, deja vu, exactly. You had talked about ASU's AI Innovation Challenge and your Create AI platform, which is a great way, research-based way for faculty and staff to pitch their AI ideas. Love that. So to dovetail, ASU just hosted its first Agentic AI and Student Experience. I think I'm gonna need to come to that next year. Where you and Joe were just at. It's crazy. So for those who couldn't make it, like myself, tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Well, so our event was hosted in Tempe, Arizona. Agentic AI and the Student Experience attracted 600 people from around the world, really exploring all of the ways that AI is intersecting with supporting the student experience, whether it be in the classroom, throughout their journey, really helping create better services and improvements, helping us all kind of move faster and find new ways to operate.
You presented?
I did.
Did you present? I'm sure you did.
I was happy to help moderate and facilitate conversation that day. There were so many voices that we were able to bring to the table to learn about all the different ideas that people are pursuing.
Were there 1 or 2 presentations that really stuck out to you?
Well, always President Michael Crow from Arizona State, he always provides a terrific way of thinking about and kind of framing the organizational evolutions that are happening and new ways for us to think about accelerating our work and making changes that are really student-centered, these kinds of things. Also, some of the sessions that were really exploring kind of the ethical use, the responsible uses of AI and the role that we all have to play in what that future can look like.
I think that is a pretty underrated conversation that's not happening too much right now. There's a lot of rush, and I love it too. I was helping my daughter. She had this entrepreneurship class. I'm helping her build a website on Replit, and we're just having fun, and it's super late at night. And but the ethical conversation of all of the data and what you're feeding it, and you're not going to get that back once it's in the LLM. But I think our response, I think, is a very important conversation, and I think we're going to have on a conversation tomorrow. But AI has been around for, there was a paper I was reading, I'm blanking on it, but like kind of the first, I think it was like 1950s, where, yeah. And so just having, what it would look like, I think he had estimated that like in 2000, LLMs would be, some version of that would be, I'm like, it's not bad. It's like 20 years off. It's like pretty crazy. So, but I love that we're having that conversation. So Doug, you work with a lot of institutions, higher ed around the country, who are dealing with endpoint explosion, not just on laptops, but every IoT device that needs to be connected. We had Ericsson on earlier, and this is a huge thing, like connectivity. What we didn't cover was the cybersecurity piece of that, right? So yeah, just love to know how you're helping CISOs and CIOs finally get visibility into their environments that are really even more and more complex, especially in higher ed where researchers are bringing their own devices, kids. I mean, I'm sure it's like the average device is like 9.7 for each person, right? So
Yeah, so fundamentally, if you don't know what you have, you can't protect it, is one thing. But I also want to ask these guys here about how important is the fidelity and timeliness of the data to AI? How important is that to make AI work well?
Well, I mean, data is the fuel that the AI runs on, right? And that's where, particularly as we continue to enhance and providing these agentic workflows, these new agentic AI capabilities, having enterprise data that is AI ready and is usable inside of secure private environments is critical to that success.
And the timeliness, how recent is it, right? Is this from like last month or is this 20 minutes ago?
Right, I think it goes without saying that having kind of that immediate access to relevant information is critical.
Well, and to your question, that's what we provide. So if you find out all the devices and stuff that you have, then you can get this real-time data about them. Right, you use a self-driving car. I don't want data from 20 minutes ago. I want data from, what's just happening on the street, right? That's what we provide. To that high fidelity, and we're using AI to help IT departments scale. So if you think about from a threat, I'm in the NOC and I've got all these different signals and stuff coming in from threats. I mean, higher education is like target number one for threat actors that come in. So the amount of data that you have coming in is just unbelievable. How do you use AI to help parse that? Here's the things that we know we don't really, these are false alarms, these are lower priority things. We've hardened the network where these aren't a risk. How do you go through all of that data to get to the things that your humans, the carbon-based life forms, really need to investigate and go do that? That's another area from the agental standpoint is where we're going in to try to help the IT department scale. But to your point there about all the different devices, PCs, servers, and all the other things, that's pretty easy to do, it's straightforward, has been doing that for a while. But now you start adding these operational technologies, these IoT that you talk about, every device is connected, and a lot of them aren't designed to be scanned in the typical way that you scan things now. They'll tip over. It's like a fainting goat. You make a loud noise and the device dies until you can go out there and see it. So how do you talk to them in a native language, again, to get that data about that device so you know and you can make educated decisions? That's really what we're focusing on.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's the snapshot in time, which is, I run very small business, but in the business world, it's like, hey, you're looking at this balance sheet, which is snapshot in time, but you really want to know is, how's the cash in the bank account work, right? That's moving daily, right? And it's the same thing, like in cyber, you could take a snapshot of all the devices, but that might not tell you 3 months from now, or if you have an audit, right? It just doesn't tell you what's happening in real time.
Who's running malware.exe right now? We need to stop it, right? Who's got that?
Yeah. So, no, I really like that. So, Joe, something that you started was the community of practice at UCSB. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, the community of practice born from a couple of folks' ideas, and I'm one of them, and we partner with a colleague of mine. We partnered together before even AI, based on common interests on student success. So online teaching and learning. So we had this idea and said, let's start with a community. Right? I think there's a need for us to be talking about AI in a way that's inclusive and diverse. And that from the very beginning, that has been our motto and in our commitment. And so Josh Bright, our CIO, is a sponsor along with our ABC for online teaching and learning. And so it's been a space of about 340 staff, faculty, and students and researchers to come together in different venues to talk about, the ethics, the responsible AI, and hands-on, right? And talk about security. Oftentimes when I see like AI literacy programs, frameworks, security isn't one of them, right? And so we built that in to say, part of the responsible and ethical use of AI. So that's been the place where we've been able to do a lot of change management, right? And I'm actually presenting tomorrow on AdCar and ProSci and how change management has been part of that process and how we promote, again, the ethical and responsible use of AI. And we welcome skeptics. That's been the fun part, is like we have students and faculty having the same conversation in the same room and with respect.
Have you had this conversation with Kyle?
I don't think we have, but I do. I mean, one of the COPs, community practice, that I studied was ASU.
It's a terrific way to get people around the table talking about what's working, what's not working, what the concerns are. It's a big part of kind of mobilizing a community to work on these problems together. Part of this is it's very experimental. Everybody's trying to figure out what does it mean for their discipline, for their work, and the more that they can kind of collaborate with other people, the better.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to go a little bit deeper. You guys get to spend some time in Arizona together. What were some of the one or two highlights that the two of you were grabbing from each other?
Well, we just kind of had like a little, hallway conversation, but I'll tell you this, I'll get in general, I love the fact that we're now, the Gentech AI and student success experience are in the same sentence. I even like, and I'll tell you this, one of the comments that was made by a presenter over there says, this is a technology conference, and I'm a very diplomatic kind of person, but it says, well, it's technology, it's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Yes, the Gentech AI is about technology, and it's also about student success. Right, and so to me, that's where I think the experimentation is coming in, different perspective. And same thing with AI for efficiency. It's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Because I think if efficiency is our end goal, I think we're missing something in higher education.
And that's an important part because essentially, in as much as AI is a technological change, it's a cultural change. Right. And so part of it is, being very intentional about what are the problems we're going to take on and use this technology to solve. And that's where when we think about the student experience, it includes the classroom and all the ways we're engaging with students around achieving better outcomes. But at the same time, it's like, how can we help reduce barriers to entry, improving the admissions process or improving a student's experience throughout their journey at the institution. And so I think all of these places are where AI can play a role. And so it's important to kind of share what's working, how we're thinking about some of these problems, so that we can also kind of engage a broader community around that.
So ASU is a little unique in the sense that the scale is just so massive, both the campus and you've got the online digital piece that ASU is very well known for. With the rise of AI and where, especially on the LLM front, with a faculty member or maybe as a student or a different department, has there been a use case or something that has surprised you that's come out of the school?
Well, that's where the really neat opportunity right now, given the state of AI and some of the technologies, is really the ways that students and faculty can use it to kind of take on more complex problems, right? And that's where we've developed out technologies at ASU. One is our AI platform we call Create AI, and a big part of that is to provide access to really sophisticated AI capabilities without having to have a lot of kind of technical ability to kind of write code and things like this, that you can kind of create tools and experiences and share them with other people. But then as students kind of begin to self-adopt or kind of lean into some of these new technologies, the ways they use them to solve problems is just amazing to me. And every time I meet a student who's kind of taken on a real world problem, I'm always blown away. I'll share a quick example. I met a student recently, and she was working as part of a design studio in Hawaii that was taking on this problem of coral death. And one of the problems she had was she wanted to be able to explain her ideas to other people in her design studio. And one of her ideas was this amazing concept of, what if a boat anchor worked like an octopus and it had legs and tentacles and could grab onto things without crushing it, which is very kind of hard to describe and imagine. And so using kind of a combination of AI tools, she could quickly generate these concepts and share them with other people in her design group. And so it's things like this where students are kind of self-identifying, like, hey, these are the ways that technologies can help me take on something complicated, and not only take on that problem, but also facilitate what is a social process, right? Thinking about kind of how I can communicate better around my ideas.
So I actually haven't thought about this before, but I like what you just said about the social process and getting, because I think like when the energy comes from the students and they're getting excited about, whatever use case they're using it for, it just starts to, create that ecosystem, which is really fun. For those, you touched on it a little bit, but can you just go a little bit more on what is Create AI so that other universities can hear?
Sure. So, recognizing that AI is still being invented, new models, new capabilities coming out all the time. Part of it is, ASU needed technology infrastructure that would help us prepare for that future, right? So allow us to be agile, to shift with new technologies, to be able to kind of integrate those very quickly, also without kind of making any long-term investment in any one kind of model provider. Different models have different benefits, and when we begin to apply it across not only the enterprise, but teaching and learning and research, having a lot of variability in there was critical, but also at its core, which we were touching on a moment ago, was around the security of our data. Being able to create and blend our enterprise data with AI and doing that in secure, responsible ways. And so that's what led us to build out Create AI, which is a platform that allows our environment to create very sophisticated AI tools that are leveraged from one of 50 different large language models, whatever kind of meets the need of their tool set, and then share those experiences with other people. And that can be things, creating a chatbot that exists as part of your Canvas course, and students can ask it questions and get feedback and tutoring and things like that, all the way up to things that will help support computational science and provide the ability to quickly prototype or dive deep into research idea. So it's that kind of core piece of technology that is really kind of helping us fuel kind of what the future looks like at ASU for using AI.
Yeah, no, I really like it. And ASU is always on the forefront. I actually, once upon a time, took a class online at ASU.
Well, you're welcome anytime if you'd like to take another one.
Like 15 or 17 years ago.
Oh, well, it's time. You're overdue.
Yeah. Time to go back. Maybe I need to take a cybersecurity class online. So Doug, episode 199, we talked about whole of education. Our buddy over there, what did he say? Whole of what?
Well, it starts with whole of government, whole of education. He talks about whole of system.
Whole of system, that's what it was. Whole of system. So tell us a little bit more right now as far as the landscape of 12 months ago. You were here in this chair a year ago.
Yeah, I watched the episode again and said, well, some of that stuff's the same, some of it's improved. So
tell it, what has changed?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot more, and I went to a session today, one of the sessions here today, and they talked about the transformation they've made over the last 6 years. And what's really hard, and these guys seem like they've solved it, but in higher education, especially since it's sort of grown up with autonomous model where business school has their own pot of money and they do their own thing, and engineering does their own thing and all that. I mean, that's the way it sort of grew up, is that now there's a little bit of maturity to say we need to do things better and more at scale. Rather than sort of repeating processes in each of these things, how can we do this as sort of a system-wide? Let's do this a little bit smarter and scale and help scale things. So and really I'm seeing a lot more change to that. Well, I mean, a lot in education, like 10, 15%, but I'm having more of those conversations now. How can we help you do these things? And part of the impediment is cultural change, but she really had a great model of how you sort of go about that change. It's telling a story about how your world can be better. I always like to ask the question, what are you not able to do today because you don't have time? Time is the only thing that is not negotiable. We don't get any more of. How do you do more of that, right? And so she's asking that question, and it's just like, gives me something to hope for, right? Hey, if I had more time, so there's an identity problem with somebody, they're tied to either they built it themselves, back when a time when you sort of had to do a lot of your own stuff, and you had to do these, and it's free, like a puppy, a lot, because there's still a cost with it. So is that cost now being a hindrance to us moving forward and enabling all this AI stuff that they want, right? So there's a lot more enterprise focused, I guess you would say, mindset being shifted, but it's shifting that way, which I think is a very good thing.
Okay, so now let's go more specific. Do you have a favorite customer story or transformation that you could share?
I talked about them early last year. We just put a new one, which I'll talk about next year. You have me back. But UT Arlington, so they were, and the interesting thing about them is I went back with them. I was with them for 10 years when I was at my previous company. I knew they ran a very good shop, but there were some architectural challenges that they couldn't overcome with the platform that they had. And so I got excited to go in there. So look, I'm not here to unsell anything I sold you. That's the right thing. You've got the other stuff there. But here, can we help you with your problems? She took this thing as, I need data. I need that visibility into all those things that are out there. I need to know what vulnerabilities are out there, because if it breaks, it's going to come to us and it's going to come to the system, right? It's simply a reputational type thing. I need to have that. How can I do that? And because of the architecture and security and these different things, it was impossible. So they put Tanium in. We've got agents on all the different things. We're not bound by an Active Directory or any of these other things. You got the agent on, it's reporting in. It gives you an AWACS view of everything on the field of play, right? I got that view. Now, I could push the big red button like Arizona. State of Arizona's got this thing. I could push it, but I don't. So you have to come to an agreement with your all the stakeholders that, hey, look, we just need visibility. We're going to share it with you, so you can share it amongst yourselves, but you're still in charge of whatever you need to do. And they really transform. I'll use an example one. They had this old CVE that was from 2013 that was out there. It's one that Microsoft kept changing, that the binaries weren't there unless you had Windows 7 out there. And to be honest, I have done a POC and found Windows 7 in a closet someplace. Talking about discovery, still tied to some printer or something like
Windows
that.
Windows 7 hiding at UCSB?
So, yeah, so what we told her with that in the same way is now we can get all that data in, right? And then being able to sort of make the educated decisions about stuff. So the CVE was from 2013. They did have the binaries, but none of them had changed the registry setting that they needed to do. So it's 24,000 CVEs that I'm reporting I'm vulnerable for. I got the binaries, how am I still vulnerable? We told them how to do that, they used Tanium to fix it, the next time they rebooted, it was done. Just that's the speed and scale, which once you know what you've got, then you can go out and fix it.
Yeah, love it. And another episode I'm going to link to in the show notes was actually my episode with the former governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey. We talked a lot about cybersecurity, and it was very unique from that perspective because having a governor's perspective really on any initiative of how do you go get money, you got to go sell this to the legislature, and senior leaders, I mean, you get that. You've got to go sell that, right? You got to go get those funds. So Joe, I want to transition to technology leadership. Probably one of the most important pieces. And one of the things right now that I think is super important is keeping curiosity at the front. I think if you lose the curiosity, you kind of just fall into compliance and the rote activity of, we got to do X, Y, Z or whatever. How are you keeping curiosity at UCSB going?
Sure. I think 3 ways, and I mentioned earlier, my curiosity drives the things that I do, and that's just the nature of me. And so I try to promote that, modeling that, right? And so, Joe, you mentioned I post a lot on LinkedIn because I have a lot of conversations with my staff about the possibilities. So personally, I model that. For example, you mentioned time, Doug. I'm a product of that. So one of the ways I use them, and I talk about this with my staff, is how do I go beyond the efficiency factor and human flourishing? I want to model that by saying the amount of time that I've saved using AI, I spend that on myself. I've lost 25 pounds since June. And again, regaining the time I saved using AI, right, and showing it, and spending a lot of those time building relationships, right, and then with students and staff. So that's part of the curiosity factor too. I have like lunch with the students maybe twice a week, right, and bring those conversations back to my staff. So I think modeling that is part of the curiosity. Second piece is, again, the community practice. Developing a space where folks can share what they've learned, what's the value of AI to them. And of course, just kind of building the safe space where people build connections, right? And the third piece is through my work, right? The Campus AI Exchange, and having this kind of conversations. When I go out there and speak, it's as much learning for me as anything else. Like the Gen Tech AI, the student experience, I was geeking out. It was an international audience. I think more than 18 countries.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And so I had like a person from Israel, Luxembourg, I think Canada was there. So I was talking with all of them. So to me, I bring those kind of conversations back to my campus. Right? And I have a great CIO. He allows me to do all those explorations. And so it helps quite a bit to have that culture where professional development and just having exploration is part of the culture.
Yeah, I think you're in a tough spot when the leader above you is not backing you on anything.
He's right here too, by the way. I mean, he's gonna be one of your guests tomorrow, right?
Oh yeah. We'll have Josh back on. Yeah. So Kyle, I wanted to jump to you probably get a million use cases at ASU, right? But you still got to focus. And I love geeking out on all of the latest tech right now. I got the Claude Max. I'm on that Claude Max code. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. How do you when something looks very exciting, but you're not sure it's going to have that mission impact, that student impact, what questions are you asking if your staff comes to you and goes, hey, Kyle, we've got these 5 things or these 500 use cases. How are you filtering down the noise right now?
Well, I think there's got to be an openness to looking at those ideas. So part of it's going to be, to have a default perspective of, well, we should be trying a lot of different things and exploring a lot of different areas. So more of a question, why not? Look at some of these ideas. But part of it is, I think, one space of this is things that are highly experimental, and what can those projects teach us about ourselves as an institution? What can those projects, yield as kind of new ways to teach or new ways to work? I think those are part of the opportunity. Then we're also looking at, transformative initiatives, right? Things we want to prioritize as an enterprise that will help make a process faster, will help accelerate our work at a particular place, will increase access to the university, will help reduce the cost of a process, right? These kinds of things. And having very specific measures and a plan for how to kind of get to those measures is a critical part of that. So I think it's really very much a balance of one, kind of focusing on where are the places where we want to have an impact, and let's make sure we're kind of measuring and looking at that. But the other is enabling people to be creative, having a space where people can try new things, a safe space to work and experiment, and then learning from that and kind of, again, diffusing that learning back into the university.
So take us behind the curtain, take us inside. Does this look like a whiteboarding session? How are you getting out capturing all these ideas?
Sure. Well, I tell you, one of the most effective programs we've developed over the last 18 months is something called the AI Innovation Challenge, and it was something that was born of our collaboration with OpenAI about putting AI tools in the hands of our faculty, of our staff, of our students to kind of see what's possible. And what we did was we opened that up to the whole campus community, said, who's got an idea? We want to support it. And we received thousands of proposals. In the last 18 months, we've supported 700 different projects along those lines. We've learned something from every one of them. And part of it is, as part of that proposal, is the kind of sharing back and reviewing those proposals is done by a multidisciplinary panel of people that too are innovators and thinking about what might be possible. And hey, what does this proposal teach us about data governance, or how does this kind of open up new questions about human subject testing, or how does this help facilitate a process for us in the future? So I think these are all different ways of looking at it, but part of it is having low barrier of entry ways for our community to try new things, right? To be a part of creating whatever this future looks like with AI.
I love that. Is there a formal process for capturing these lessons learned that you're collecting?
Yeah, and that's where part of the application process is how do you plan to evaluate what's going on? Now, some of that could be, just in a friendly evaluation. Is it kind of having the kind of reach you're looking for? Others could be more instrumented, like a survey or some kind of metric-based feedback. And so part of it is the report that comes back from each one of these projects that helps us understand kind of how that went. And sometimes that helps inform, are we going to do it again? And I would say 70% of them, we do again.
I'm just going down the rabbit hole right now. I'm super curious. Is any of that public for other institutions to go? I mean, very few schools will have the scale that ASU will have. Like, can UCSB go, hey, there's a, kind of like a wiki or a portal where we can go see what was the use case, and is ASU going to, do it again, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so ai.asu.edu, which is our primary website, it's not only the vehicle we use to communicate with our ASU community, but also to share that with anybody else who would like to kind of see and learn about how we're approaching our AI journey. And so part of that is, kind of sharing those stories of faculty, of staff, of our students and the things they're doing with AI. So we do that, and then we also publish on a regular cycle our AI Journey magazine, and we just came out with a new version last week. And that too is a culmination, a collection of stories that come from things like the AI Challenge, but also other activities across the university. And so that's a big part of it is not just sharing the lessons learned, but like who are the people that kind of engaged in that process, and how did they go about it? How did they think about what that can be?
Let me add on to that actually. One of the best conversations I had last week was a student who attended one of my session, and how she was so excited about building an agent and uploading a resume and being able to kind of interrogate that chatbot. I was so excited about it. And the funny thing is, like, she goes, I'm worried about my career. I'm going like, you're gonna be okay. You have AWS experience, you're already building these. And she came up to me after the session, and she was the only student that came up to me and said, you'll be okay.
And that's where I think engaging students as partners and kind of co-designing these activities is a critical part of it.
I mean, you guys are selling on me to go into higher ed right now. I'm like, this sounds fun. This sounds a lot of fun. Are there any, well, I know there are because I've already asked, but what use cases, have you explored? Love to hear.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, let me share a story from what our chief of staff for student affairs. And our vice chancellor for student affairs said, I need a way for me to capture my handwritten notes, right? And he built a gem. We just introduced a Google AI Pro project, 300 people, and the very next day, I think the day after that, he goes, guess what I created? And he shared the prompt, to the community, and he goes, multiple people said, you know what, you just saved me like 6 hours doing this. That's one. The other piece too that I share with the community is I run an IT mentorship program. And so part of that is gathering the data from the form, Google form, building the application process behind it, and then the algorithm behind it. So I create it's called product requirements document. And I'm a developer for many years, so I have a sense benchmark. It took me seven hours to develop the whole thing, even the algorithm, how to select mentor-mentee. It would have taken me about 2 weeks, minimum, using AppScript, using Google Sheet, and we're running the program because of AI enabled. So
yeah,
this is a couple of things.
I love that. So Doug, I'd love to hear from you. What are 2 to 3 themes right now that senior level leaders should be aware about in cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, your root problem still exists. So these guys are talking about all the sexy new stuff and all this. There's still the stuff that keeps the light on and the lights on in the back end that you're running today's stuff, right? Your backup servers, your workstations and things like that. You still have to keep those healthy and know what they're doing. So, but that's still time consuming because in a lot of cases you're still doing it the same way you did maybe 10 years ago, or these, so how do you help modernize that? It's not sexy, but it's a necessity that goes on. So we're using, one way we use is AI and machine learning to say, okay, look, if you install this patch, and everybody else has done this in your environment, so like there's 1.5 million endpoints that we get data from, they've had about a 98% success rate installing this patch. Would you feel pretty good about installing it on a Saturday or a Friday? 98% is not too bad, right? I would feel pretty good. But if I've got a 75%, like there's a browser that just came out and 75% of the problem are now having increased CPU and memory usage, I'm not going to do that right away. So you can use this data, much like you're talking about, to make more educated decisions. Call this I with confidence it's going to go on. So that's some of the things we're thinking about. And then adding that into automation. So it's not sexy, but if it takes me to patch a SQL server, it takes me 3 man-hours to go do that because it's in a cluster and I have a lot of manual steps, that's, again, time. I can't go back and develop myself. If we can help automate that process, again, using some confidence scores and stuff that we have, and makes it more reliable, then, again, I want technology to fade into the background. The best technology, you don't know it exists, right? It just works. And so the automation piece is a big thing. Everybody's looking at how do we do this? There's still some sort of reliance on, well, we've done this, I've got PowerShell scripts, I got these things I've used for years, which works great until the vendor changes something. And then you got to go back and redo it. So how about you do this in Gartner says this from automation to get to autonomous, you need to have sort of a single platform where all the data is the same. I talked about it before, pulling in your OT stuff, your other things, getting your asset data, where it's all in one place where I know what that data is, I know how fresh it is, and then if I got these AI things and on the other end that I can apply to that, then I trust it a lot more. So really that's sort of the things that's going on is how do we automate, how do we get more out of the staff that we have? Nobody's ever says I got enough IT budget and staff, no CIO ever said that. I don't think they ever will. Right, I need more, you always need more. So how do you do more with the staff that you've got? Not to replace anybody, but how do you enable all this AI stuff, which is time consuming, to put into place to support, to do the guidance and stuff? How do I give them the time back from an operational perspective to do that? And that's really what we're focusing on.
As we kind of, thank you, Doug, as we kind of start to turn the corner and wrapping this up, Kyle, I'd love to hear from you. You probably meet with a ton of leaders in higher ed, constantly having that, I don't want to say like ticker tape, but probably got a great pulse of the conversation. What are you hearing across the nation right now, specifically on the AI front?
Well, I think, for many organizations, as you kind of lay out your strategy around AI, I would say the two most common questions I hear is, what's a good first step and what's a good next step, right? And so I think part of it is engaging in that community building, the cultural component of it, the education piece of that's critical. And that's one of those things where at ASU we did that early on, that has paid dividends since. We've been able to engage thousands across the university in professional development. And that makes it so that there's a lot of energy and excitement and interest in kind of continuing to accelerate this work. But then the next step becomes more about, harnessing that technology and using it to solve problems inside of your environment. So a key part of that is, what are the problems you're looking to solve? And can we kind of improve a process? Can we make it easier to accomplish something? Can we improve the job satisfaction of people in our organization, right? There are many different ways that we can think about the opportunity with AI, but I think that's the critical thing for most organizations, is to effectively take a great first step and then take a quick next step to really deliver value for the community.
I love what you said, a quick next step. Because I think it can be very easy to get, because I think like with AI, it's really a business problem, right? It's not like an IT problem. It's touching everything, right? And so what happens is you get people into a room and it grinds to a halt. Unless the leadership is supporting the curiosity, it can be very tough.
I think that's an excellent point you're making, which is that what's novel about this technology is that it's not necessarily the IT professionals that are creating the IT solution, right? In this case, using the tools, they're able to kind of create experiences and projects and activities and tool sets that they can share with other people. They can put the AI to work, and it's not an AI managed project. It's done within the business unit, kind of applying their knowledge to helping solve that problem. And so this is a new opportunity space for IT to begin to define how do we even support or help our business units help accelerate in a lot of these places.
Yeah. No, it's what a time to be alive right now. Yeah, it's great.
I use AI, I haven't written a PowerShell script in months because AI is much better at doing it than I am to go do that. So again, I can then focus my skills, limited as they are compared to these guys, I can focus those on other things that are a little bit more important. That's what you're saying. I've got a business problem. I can use this technology to take care of the stuff I don't know to help me do the stuff that I do know.
Well, let me just kind of round up the conversation here. We're not done yet, but I was just thinking about, yeah, Kyle and I, we're deputy CIO. So yeah, we're talking about AI today, but we do have foundational systems. So support, information systems, financial information systems, the applications that support that. And so while we're talking about AI today, and the idea of digitizing, we've talked about it with previous technology, but really it is a possibility here. But at the end of the day, we still got to do our part to make sure that our data, if you talk about fidelity, we need to have infrastructure that are solid. We need to make sure that we have the services that will enable the community to be able to take advantage of that. And so there's other layers of looking at AI, IT, the roles that we play and the partnership that we're developing. So we're evolving as well. And my hope is that as we advance AI, it does come down to us being human beings and working together as a community, because that's what it's going to take for us to advance this in a responsible way.
So I'm laughing because you've used this line 100 times today already, but in the words of my friend Ryan Murray, who you would know and you would know, the state CISO in Arizona, I'm going to double click on what you just said. So one of the things that I also lead roundtables, and one of the things in the roundtable that I often hear other CIOs or CISOs asking is, what amount of time do you spend on keeping the lights on versus what amount of time are you spending on innovation or strategy, getting kind of above the fold? I'd love to hear, what amount of time? Is it an 80-20? Is it 50-50?
Are you talking about myself or like our IT organization? For me, still operations. Again, we talk about the sexy stuff, but at the end of the day, there's still operations to be run. And I think the more we can modernize our systems, the better we can then talk about strategy and the leadership piece of it. So for me, probably 80% of that, 7% is operations. 15% of that is on leadership, and then that's like the sexy stuff, AI. So they all come together. But again, the day, it's like, how do we build ourselves as a community?
I might challenge the premise. Innovation is keeping the lights on. And I think it's incumbent upon us. We're obligated to provide a better experience, to reduce the cost of attendance to the greatest degree that we can, to use every conceivable way that we can identify to help provide a successful environment for our students, for our researchers, for the people that make the university happen.
I love it. I love it. Any final words?
No, I love what these guys are doing. They've got the right priorities to go on. You need to sort of keep thinking ahead. Like I said, it is a priority. If we don't develop that, somebody else is going to do that. But to your point there about the operational piece, how much of that time can you get back? It all comes back down to time. How much time can you get back and still have reliable and high fidelity data to enhance these AI solutions you're trying to do? You got to think bigger. What got you here today is not going to get you there tomorrow. You need to think about how you're going to transform as an organization and personally. I loved what he did with his time to go back and be human and sort of feed yourself. And I've been trying to do some of that. We all should be able to do that and do what humans do best, which is learn from each other and become better people.
And by the way, I want to say AI did not, just magically make that happen for me, but it did help me enable that.
Yeah.
So
it got rid of some excuses that you put in your own mindset that I don't have time to do.
It's a mindset, right? It has to be commitment, but I think it's just the idea of modeling what could be. Like I said, it's not just efficiency. We got to go beyond that. Right. Human flourishing is my goal.
I love it. Well, I could go on a lot of other topics within this realm for a few different hours, actually. Just even right now, it used to be, SQL injections. You've got prompt there's articles I'm reading every day where I'm educating myself because I'm like, wow, I need to be careful. And even with ChatGPT, what comes up, right? I'm like, is this real? We got to make sure nothing's running. So it's kind of fun in that sense where kind of rolling the clock back a little bit. It used to be the days like Craigslist. You go on Craigslist and you're like, oh, that person's really not who they say they are. And then it, kind of evolved from there. You had to be diligent. And then we talked a lot about, cybersecurity and, leveling up your own employees to be that kind of first line defender. And now it's kind of taking the next step, right? And so with AI and all that, but this is a fun conversation. I know we probably can't cover everything, but I really appreciate you all coming on the show again.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.